Hey, good morning, everyone. Appreciate everyone jumping on today. This is Dan Drew. I'll be taking you through our conversation with the Cohesity team today. I just wanted to thank everyone again for their time. We're going to do a quick overview on who eGroup is for those who might not have run through that before, and then we'll pass it off to our presenter today, Josh Haley with Cohesity, and kind of get through it. So again, should be sharing out my screen right now. We're going to talk real quick about eGroup and just kind of who we are, where we've been in the industry, and we'll talk a little bit about that partnership with Cohesity. eGroup as a company, I'm out of the DC area, based out of Northern Virginia, so if you're from this area, you might not have heard of us as much, but we're growing pretty quickly up here. But eGroup as a company has been around for about 20 years, headquartered out of Charleston, South Carolina. We're a privately owned organization, family owned, if you will, and we focus on a very strategic portfolio of vendors that we align with our expertise services to deliver speed and certainty to your data center and cloud initiatives. And having done this for quite some time, we've been able to grow the business to over 300 or so active customers on the regular. We're coast to coast in who we address and who we work with. So really, a lot of our customers are coming back to the well for our services and assistance in how we deliver our capabilities here. So this is kind of the standard page to show you a highlight around some of our providers, namely the Microsoft Gold partner. We're able to help out across the data center there. And we'll touch on that partnership with Josh just a tad today at the end, and how Cohesity and Microsoft all align together. But just to kind of show you that eGroup's been around, we've been kind of working on customer success and making sure that we're delivering top-notch results for our customers. A big part of that, again, going back to our strategic vendors, is the strategery behind the vendors. And so that's where I want to introduce Josh today. He's going to take you through the Cohesity technologies and what we've been able to do. And we'll wrap today just with a quick chat on partnership and how you might be able to leverage what we can do together as a group. So with that, Josh, I'm going to hand over controls, if you give me just a moment.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Dan. All right. All right, well, thank you for that introduction, Dan. I look forward to working with you. My name is Josh Haley. I'm a Field Technical Director for Cohesity. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, but I cover the entire Southeast. Before joining Cohesity, I've held just a number of technology roles, mostly focused around data management, both in the large enterprise and on the manufacturing side for probably the last 20-ish years. Today, I really wanted to share with you just a little bit about who Cohesity is and sort of what we do. We were actually founded by Dr. Mohit Arand, and Mohit was at Google when Google had, say, less than 600 people, and he was tasked with helping them build their file system. So Mohit was actually one of the lead architects on the Google file system, and as you can imagine, that file system gave Google tremendous advantage to going from just one of many, say, search engines to being a verb in the English language. But Mohit realized that file system really had a number of enterprise use cases. And so he went on to become the co-founder and CTO of Nutanix, where he realized that file system could enable simplicity and scale for organizations' virtualized workloads. As such, he was credited with basically being the father or grandfather of hyper-converged infrastructure. But what he felt about Nutanix was that it solved part of the problem. The production virtual machines were really a fraction, maybe 20% of most organizations' data, and that the rest of the data services and the rest of the data sets in an organization could really benefit from that same scale, that same simplicity, and that's ability to add intelligence from data storage. And so he left to start Cohesity. And that's really his vision for Cohesity, is solve data management at scale with a simple technology that can solve challenges across backups and archives, file services, and test dev, and even analytics. And as such, it's been a tremendous ride so far. We continue to grow very, very quickly. We no longer consider ourselves a startup, but more a pre-IPO company with really excellent funding and excellent investors. But more than that, we've got just sort of amazing customers. On the right-hand side, you'll see just a host of some of our public references. What's interesting is there really no specific industry that we target. We've been well adopted in some of the largest organizations on the planet, as well as at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a number of references for our federal government and DoD, which is generally just a testament to the security and the resilience and the robustness of our technology. So if I was to give you an analogy for what we think of ourselves, I'll start with Google. So Google started out with a file system that could really be a software-defined file system across scale-out infrastructure. And the intention was to use a single manageability layer to be able to access data that was indexed in whatever consolidation architecture it was in. So pods of file systems that were scale-out and software-defined that were accessed through a single management framework or a single management layer. And while Google started with search as their most common app, they began to layer other apps and services on top of the manageability layer so that they could do other things, whether that was Maps or Gmail or a whole host of applications that Google now provides. And the question that Mohit really wanted to answer is, why can't we do the same thing for enterprise data centers or enterprise customers? They've got data centers, they've got remote offices. In this case, many of them have one or multiple cloud architectures. And in each of those, we see copies and copies of data. We see a lot of duplication. So it's extremely fragmented across the different architectures. There's not a lot of efficiencies as there's, again, copies and copies of data. But almost as important now is the idea of dark data, data that we don't know what inherent risk it brings to our organization. Because in reality, there's very little optics inside of all of the data that organizations store. What really generates a lot of this inefficiency is all the different silos. And so most organizations have just a whole pile of different architectures that they use to store and manage data across the life cycle of that data, whether it's for, say, data protection or file and object storage, or where they send their backups to. So Cohesity has a really simple vision of solving that challenge of what we call mass data fragmentation by eliminating the silos, consolidating the data, and simplifying the scale and the management of it. And so really that's what we've done. We basically developed a hyper-converged architecture that can provide data protection, file and object services, and fully cloud integration in a scalable, simple building block approach. We use our file system called SpanFS, so it's one workload, whether we run that on hardware or software or natively in the cloud, whether we run that on our own Cohesity branded hardware or through our partnerships with Cisco, HPE, Dell, and even others. We have one user interface, so we call it Helios. It is a true single pane of glass. We can see an organization's entire Cohesity estate, whether it's one cluster or 100 clusters, and we can actively manage them all from a single interface. So there's very little additional parts and pieces needed for an organization. But finally, one of the things I think really differentiates us is we also agree that the ability to run apps and services, especially apps where we're bringing compute to the data, can really make a lot of sense. And so we have a host of services that we can actually run in our hyperconverged architecture to extract value, increase security, or aid compliance for organizations. So many of our customers today, they can get started with Cohesity in a number of different ways. For many customers, we actually start out as a backup target. I think we replace your traditional backup target or simplify that transition from tape or other. But we also have a fully featured data protection software, which again can use our hyperconverged architecture as a target. We also have the ability to provide just direct file and object services, so we can work with organizations on their file storage needs or their object storage needs. And in some cases, I'm even working with organizations on their cloud native strategy. So we're helping them protect their cloud native workloads, whether that's Azure or others, including software as a service like Microsoft 365. So as it relates to backup, most organizations that use what I'd call a legacy backup architecture, traditional backup architecture, they have a number of different sources that they protect, whether it's mostly virtualized servers, but a handful of physical servers. They probably have a handful of databases or even multiple database platforms, and maybe even other sources of data that they have to protect. From a manageability perspective, they send that data through a whole cadre of systems, whether it's the common that's depicted here, master and media servers, multiple different sort of tiers of service levels for target storage out, whether that's disk storage, tape storage, or even cloud gateways. Those pieces are all going to be managed sometimes independently. They're going to scale and lifecycle independently. So there's a lot of complexity, and in some cases, organizations have multiple different data protection solutions. It's not common at all, or it's not uncommon at all to find, one solution for the databases, a different solution for the virtual machines. And so what we've done is we've basically translated this entirely into a hyper-converged architecture. So we run all of the services under the covers. We're actually running container services in the hyper-converged infrastructure. That lets us create all of these different services as a single sort of form factor and deployment methodology. It allows us to do things like automatically scale, load balance, and distribute. And so that gives us a bunch of advantages. We can actually ingest data across all our nodes simultaneously to help create faster backups. We can also do a number of really interesting recovery methodologies. One that really differentiates us is the ability to do something that we call instant mass restore. The idea is this: imagine that you've got a virtualization environment that's been impacted by ransomware. And so you actually have a need to recover dozens, hundreds, even thousands of virtual machines. One of the biggest challenges with those kinds of recoveries is the rehydration of the data from deduplication appliances. Well, we do have deduplication, but because we also have the ability to serve out NAS, we can actually present the snapshots of these data directly back to a virtual center, register the VMs, and boot them up. Zero rehydration required. So we actually just did for a customer a mock disaster recovery test where we had to recover 2,000 virtual machines in order to pass their test. Again, our architecture is what allows that. Because we're a node-based architecture, we don't need to do that 5-year, 3-5-year lifecycle refresh. There's no forklifts at all required. Because what happens because of a node-based architecture is you can add nodes as you need, and we automatically redistribute the data across the nodes. So there's nothing for you to do other than to add the nodes. So in reality, what a lot of our customers do is they don't have to buy for 3 or 5 years, that unpredictable, what do we think our growth is going to be? You buy what you need and you add nodes as you need them. We also have capabilities like Worm, so write once, read many, the ability to data lock data, whether it's for something like compliance or legal hold, or just to make sure that bad actors or hackers can't get in and delete your data. And finally, we've got amazing storage efficiencies. The entire Cohesity cluster would participate in a global deduplication pool. Our global deduplication is both sliding window variable length dedupe, so it's effectively the most comprehensive deduplication that you can get. We also added to that compression for just amazingly dense architectures that have a really strong lowered total cost of ownership. We can also support your common file and object services workloads. So just as an example, we can do this across all the protocols at the same time. So both NFS, SMB, and even S3. Again, we're still going to benefit from the storage efficiency features. But one of the things that we do as part of data protection is that we actually index the data. So we can actually enable you to search across all your data anywhere. We can do that both in the backups and in the file services place. We have a number of interesting ways that we can tier data from on-prem to the cloud. We can actually even tier data from existing NAS architectures to Cohesity to help you drive down the cost of storing data. Because we have a very strong data protection offering, migrating is typically one of the biggest challenges in replacing NAS environments. For us, it's as easy as backing it up and then presenting it back out as a single one-click operation from the Cohesity platform. And finally, a number of the applications that we have are really focused on simplifying NAS management. I'll talk to those when we get to the applications. I also mentioned cloud native. So not only do we have the ability to run natively in the cloud, we actually can talk the native APIs to protect those cloud native workloads. So we can back up AWS or Azure compute instances. We have the ability to back up some of their native platform as a service capabilities as well. We also have the ability to back up things like Microsoft 365. So we can actually bring the exact same look and feel of your on-premises data protection or your cloud native data protection, and even extend that to software as a service apps. Office 365 is available today. We're just about to release support for Salesforce as well. We also have the ability to send data up to the cloud from on-prem, which is a really common use case. No longer do we need to keep, say, 1, 3, 5-year retention in a vault somewhere. We can actually send that to really low cost storage in the cloud. And for us, it's as simple as a single policy. But we can take it a step further than that. Not only can we handle the retention in the cloud, we can also help conversion to the cloud with a technology that will actually refactor and reformat virtual machines that have been backed up on-prem. We'll actually automatically run them through the cloud's native import process to spin them up as an AWS EC2 instance or an Azure virtual machine. Completely transparent, just as part of the backup process, or which can be used for test and dev. One of the biggest reasons that we do this in the cloud is because we're providing a single console, a single log, and auditable backups, which organizations find extremely important. But we can also add things like efficiencies via storage efficiencies like deduplication and compression, which help drive down the cost of cloud storage. Recently, I compared our capabilities as it relates to archiving to the cloud with one of our competitors. Now, the competitor I was comparing against only did compression for their cloud archive, where we'll do compression, deduplication, source side, of course, and incremental archives. For this particular customer, there was a 5-year retention requirement. And because of the differences in the storage efficiencies, we are going to be able to drive out about 85% of their cloud storage bill over the life cycle of 5 years of data. So the storage efficiencies really do matter. Finally, with Cohesity's licensing, a lot of our customers that we support are going from on-prem to the cloud. Our licenses are portable. So you could actually start on-prem, and as your cloud footprint grows, we can transition the licenses without the need to rebuy. So dev test, anything that we protect in the Cohesity system, we can actually instantly present back out from the Cohesity system. So the idea here is if we back up virtual machines, we can present them out using the storage of the Cohesity system instead of making copies back to production. So this dramatically reduces the time that it takes to create these clones, and of course, it costs no storage space. We can do this for virtual machines, we can do this for databases, and we can even do this for NAS shares. So unlimited zero-cost clones, no performance impact to production. But we're doing some really interesting things. So one of the newer apps that we're bringing to the marketplace is the ability to do database masking. So the idea is we could actually take that production database, we can back it up, clone it out, and then on the clone, apply a masking rule that says take all the PII, like social security numbers, and remove that so that we can use the clone for development and testing without the concern of propagating PII. Again, all as part of the single platform. I mentioned Helios. So Helios is our single global management interface. It's actually software as a service. So we host this in a secure multi-tenancy environment for you. It can actually be configured for read-only or even read-write, but it gives you a global search across all of your Cohesity locations. One of the other things that we do is we use this to basically evaluate all of the data that you protect to make sure that if we detect anomalies or patterns that we think look like ransomware, which could be things like by baselining every workload's backup sort of metrics, we can start to see things like backups that are abnormal given previous history, delta change rates that are too high, compression ratios that are too low, deduplication ratios that are too low, things that actually are what ransomware looks like. And we can detect those, we can alert you, we can even alert you via our new mobile app. So you could actually get a potential ransomware indicator directly to your phone. I've mentioned a number of apps. We have basically apps that we've written to help sort of simplify the data management. All of the apps that Cohesity has written, they're available to our customers at no additional charge. So you'll see things that would be, so a couple of examples would be Spotlight. This is for NAS services. This is actually file access auditing in basically a clickable graph interface. So you can say, hey, show me all my shares, show me, all of the different, read, write, create, patterns that have been going on. Let's actually drill down and see what this user has been deleting in what share. All right, so you can see all of those things in pretty much real time. Insight's actually really interesting as well. This really helps with compliance. The idea behind Insight is not only do we index the file names, we'll actually index the file contents. So things like text docs or Office documents or PDF files, we'll actually go and index the contents and give you a query bar where you can search through your data to look for things like dark data and compliance issues. So as an example, I could actually search for a social security number, potentially for a GDPR request, or I could actually populate a regular expression that searched for anything that matches any social security number. Again, all available directly from the platform. You'll also see a couple other ones. So Sentinel-1 and ClamAV. ClamAV is open source, so it's available for free as well. But Sentinel-1 and ClamAV are antivirus solutions. So we would actually host antivirus directly on the cluster, eliminating the need for, say, additional virtual machines or additional configurations. Support for things like Christie BMR. We actually just added support for Model 9. But one of my favorites is probably our integration with Tenable.io. So Tenable.io is a security scanner. And so the idea of our integration is we'll actually use Tenable.io under the covers against the backups of virtual machines that we're protecting for you. So instead of actually having to hit your production of virtual machines and putting that scanning load on them, we'll actually instantiate the virtual machines under the covers of the Cohesity platform, scan it locally, and then we'll incorporate the vulnerability information not only into Helios, but into our restore methodology as well. So if you go to recover a VM, we'll actually show you how many vulnerabilities it has. And the last thing on apps is you actually have the ability to create and upload your own apps as well. So it's a pretty open ecosystem. So ransomware is super important right now. There's been a number of really high-profile ransomware attacks lately. Unfortunately, a lot of these organizations thought that they were protected. They thought they had a good response, and in a couple of cases, they ended up having to pay the ransom. So there's a couple of different things that we look at, but the first one is we have an immutable file system. And our file system architecture is a little different from everybody else's. So when we go into that first backup, we take a snapshot. The difference is we don't do snapshot chains. So snapshot 1, snapshot 2, and snapshot 3 in Cohesity are completely unrelated to each other. Because what we do is when we go to do that first incremental, we actually clone the previous snapshot. And so the original snapshot never gets put back on the network again ever. So effectively, we're air gapped internally. And we would merge changes into the clone and then snapshot that. So that gives us the ability to scale to millions of immutable snapshots with no chain dependencies between them, which actually helps us increase storage efficiencies. We also have the ability to turn on worm capabilities, again, data lock. And so we could say, hey, for a week, no backups can be deleted. Under the covers, we're actually creating a new security role, and that security role is a compliance role, which is different from, say, a backup or an administrator role. So again, we're automatically allowing you to segregate responsibilities to protect against credential compromise or even a bad actor. We do have really granular role-based access control, so it's really easy for us to go ahead and create least privilege access. My real strong recommendation to everybody is we do support multi-factor authentication. Turn it on. That would stop things like Trojans or keyloggers from being able to scrape administrative credentials. It's a really, really, really good recommendation for any technology that you consume. And finally, we can encrypt at rest, in flight, locally, and in our targets. In general, I would recommend turning on encryption at rest for pretty much everything. We also use Helios to discover vulnerabilities from our machine learning algorithms. So that's how we detect ransomware, but we can also discover vulnerabilities with our antivirus solutions or our CyberScan scanning application. And finally, in the event that there is an issue, we have that mass recovery, so the ability to recover at scale, but we also can leverage the global search to find things that we suspect are causing issues. And that global search can really help sort of limit the spread and exposure of ransomware. So this is really the Cohesity story. If we can consolidate multiple workloads so we can drive simplification, scale, even a reduced attack surface, we can bring all of that through a single manageability layer, whether that is our Helios or from a single API framework stack. And we can layer apps and services to help you more effectively manage, secure, and maintain compliance of your data. What we think really sort of differentiates us from others in the space is under the covers, we really have a scale out file system that incorporates all of the different resources. Our SpanFS actually stretches across, so it's not a bunch of disaggregated storage pools stitched together. And that gives us a lot of advantages for the ability to scale out, the ability to provide completely transparent, non-disruptive operations, including, do a software upgrade while you're backing up or presenting a clone and nothing will even flicker. Extreme space efficiencies, because again, it's a global storage pool, so we can actually do global efficiencies. Really resilient metadata architecture, which is what benefits our global searches, and even allowing you to search, multiple workloads, multiple jobs, even multiple sites in a single query. I really like our cybersecurity story. I spent a lot of time working with organizations helping them secure their backups, because their backups is certainly a key part of their ability to respond to ransomware. And in many cases, I found that our apps to sort of take that to a whole nother level. At the end of the day, Cohesity is not just another backup. That's the little not jab. We see a lot of organizations that are playing in the data protection space. We're really trying to solve a bigger challenge, which is helping organizations manage their data, whether it's primary data or backup data, on-prem, in the cloud, from a hardware platform that can run software, scale out, or cloud native. And that, I really thank everybody for your time today.
Awesome. Josh, yeah, that was great. And kind of, I had a thought towards the end of that. You mentioned just another backup, and I appreciate you mentioning that, because prior to our partnership, I did really kind of put Cohesity in that backup bucket. That's probably kind of, I came out of the backup space as far as my entry into IT, but I really primarily had thought of you all as a backup solution. But it sounds like, if I'm a large organization using Commvault and writing that data to data domain, you all can come in and help me with my data domain, and then later down the road help me with my Commvault.
Absolutely.
So you're kind of two parts there, but then kind of what you're doing on the file side of things, and even into the cloud. I know we've come a long way where we're looking at what we would kind of consider a storage solution, but we're talking about the benefits in the cloud. It's kind of the definition of hybrid cloud has continued to evolve. So I think that note is of particular interest as well. Yeah, I want to leave the floor open for any other questions from the chat there, but take a look at our time. We've got about a minute. I did have one more if we don't have any in the chat. Can you tell me just a little bit more about kind of the OEM, kind of the ecosystem, eGroup being a Cisco and an HPE partner? I know that those have been specifically called out as Cohesity relationships, but are you all strictly Cohesity by itself, or do you work with the other groups? How's that work briefly?
Yeah, so we actually have really strong alliances. Actually, if you saw in my very first slide, both Cisco and HPE are multiple round investors in Cohesity. Okay. So we like them a lot. But we also have customers that have other preferences, and again, that's the strength of a software platform, is we can go and certify a configuration, as we've done with Dell, and we have a couple of other ones that are on the near-term roadmap. Again, we are in general a software company, so we do sell hardware appliances, but we are absolutely pleased to put that on HPE or Cisco, and we think that there's a lot of value for organizations to be able to run in the exact same platform that they use for the rest of their compute services.
I do see a question popping in the chat box here. What version of Cohesity supports the features presented?
So in general, I think that the only thing that I referenced that is not pretty much across most of the versions is going to be the database masking, which is the database masking is actually an external app that is in beta right now. But everything else would work with, say, everything that we've had for probably the last 12 months for sure. So 6.4 and
Okay.
above, 6.4.1 and above. We recently released 6.5.1. So in general, we release new code about every quarter.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, shout out Diane for that question. I was starting to run out of questions, but that's also something where the eGroup team can kind of help in with our technical experts as well. So part of our onboarding, right, with you all, Josh, was really getting our tech team up to speed on what you all do, making sure that we can deliver that as well. So Diane, thank you again for that question. Give it a few more seconds. Josh, any last kind of comments, thoughts, or anything before we wrap today?
Yeah, I'll give you one more comment. So, I think that our initial objective as a company was to create a really good backup platform, and I think that we have done that. I think that we've then opened it up to create an amazing NAS platform. We really call our NAS smart files because it brings a lot of intelligence to the file storage. What you should expect to see over, say, the next quarter from us is extremely simplified disaster recovery. So imagine when your data protection platform can also help you facilitate disaster recovery and business continuance. It's going to be pretty slick stuff.
That's good and relevant, with everything going on with Hurricane Laura. So that's good to know. Great. Well, Josh, thank you again for your time. Thank you to those of you that were able to cut some time out today and check in with us and hang on for the show. We'll send out a recording of this afterwards. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But again, everyone have a good rest of the week and enjoy the weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, eGroup.